Hello everyone. Today I have kind of a different video. I'm going to be offering my reaction to a film that was just released, which is available for free on YouTube, to her credit. It's Melanie Martinez's K through 12, and it's sort of a series of pop videos to promote her new album. So it's a little bit like a musical, but it's in this this strange school that is in this very Victorian sort of a setting. Everything is very cute and very pretty, and then it has these underlying horror elements. So it's supposed to be kind of like a gothic Lolita sort of a flavor.
Would you like to inform Crybaby and Angelita of what rule they did not follow today?
When the bell rings, you must be in your assigned seat.
And overall, you know, it's obviously very expensive, and you know, for what it is, I guess they did a pretty good job. Now, I'm going to be commenting on kind of the moral message behind this, because I think it's really important. I can tell that this is something that is really smartly designed to appeal to very young girls, like 14, 15-year-old girls. And in that way, you can kind of see this film as a parallel to the movie Get Out. I described the movie Get Out as, you know, an anthem to Black narcissism. And this is very similar, but for preteen girls. And there's a couple of different ways to look at it. You could look at it from a more conspiratorial angle, because, you know, we know that all pop singers are actually puppets who are controlled by the New World Order or by the Illuminati, and they're, you know, very carefully constructed in order to promote certain social narratives. So you can look at it from that perspective and say, you know, what is it that they're trying to sell to young girls in putting together this film? But you can also just kind of take it at face value. You can kind of just assume this is what Melanie Martinez wanted to produce. This is what resonates, you know, with herself and with her audience and with the people who like her music. And I think that either way, you know, either way, it's fine. I mean, you can't sell someone something that they don't already want. So I don't really feel that distinction is very important. But I did just want to throw it out there that you could look at this as something much more nefarious from like a top-down perspective, but at the same time that's not really important as far as like the overall themes are. But so what is this? It is, like I said, like a series of music videos. It's kind of like a musical. It's set in this school, and the school is you know, it kind of has the form of a school without any of the function. You never see the kids in this production actually studying or doing anything that, you know, would be considered the traditional purpose of school. And this is actually something you'll see in most TV shows and movies that feature like a high school setting, is you'll find that there's generally not very much of a theme of relating to what the kids are actually learning. It's all about the social dynamic, and that seems to be all that's really important. And I think that that's not an accident. I think that whenever we're talking about moral stories directed at young girls, all of the themes that are very important to them have to do with social acceptance and with self-acceptance and with bullying, and with, you know, things like that, with the kind of the social interaction less so with like actually having a goal and achieving it. Now, one thing that is interesting about this film is there actually are a few moments where they use the setting and the flavor to create some very, very dark moments. But then the entire thing just gets ruined because this main character, Crybaby, played by Melanie Martinez herself, she just kind of waltzes in and uses her superpowers. She literally has superpowers. The limits of her power are never really explained. Her and her friends have these powers as well, and that's how they know they're friends.
Holy shit. Is she one of us?
They can use fire, they can use water, they can manipulate objects with their mind, they can float, Crybaby can strangle people with her hair. Basically, they can do whatever. They can pick locks, they can shapeshift, at the very end. And obviously I am spoiling this, so, if you want to watch it, if you want to have the authentic Melanie Martinez experience, like I said, it's available on YouTube for free. So yeah, I'm spoiling this because I'm imagining that pretty much anybody who's interested in my channel is definitely, I couldn't pay you to watch this. So I've watched it so you don't have to. But anyway, yeah, at the end of it, she makes the school float away by blowing a giant spit bubble and then jumping out of it. And it's not really explained how you blow a spit bubble that contains this entire object that you're on that's floating away, but then you're able to jump outside of your own bubble. Like, that would pop the bubble, wouldn't it? So it wasn't really that well thought out. It was a little bit goofy. What you see in this movie is that all of the authority figures and all of the other kids are the antagonists. And Crybaby and her friends are sort of supposed to be these more kind of outcasted kids. They're not the most popular ones. They're just kind of strange, right? And the irony is that at face value, this film is trying to promote a theme of accepting who you are and being understanding and caring. Yet in the way that it's executed, there's a dehumanization of anybody in their out group. All of the blonde girls are these like pretty popular girls, and they're all seen as the same, and they're all very, very mean, and there's not really any exploration of why they are that way. They're just evil. Same thing with most of the boys, unless the boy is her black love interest, then the boys are really just kind of automatons. They're simultaneously like robots, just kind of responding to cues and not really having any real thing going on in their brains, and like animals. Like they're just very material beings that are just responding to things blankly. And where you really see this come through is kind of halfway. She has a song about being objectified called Strawberry Shortcake, right? And it's all about how she's going through puberty and she's coming into her own body, and she feels so vulnerable because why are all the boys looking at her?
Got boys acting like they ain't seen skin before. Got sent home to change cause my skirt is too short. It's my fault, cause I put icing on top. Now the boys want a taste of the strawberry shortcake. That's my bad, no one told them not to grab. Now the boys want a taste of the strawberry shortcake.
And it's just a replication of this very basic bitch message that really resonates with preteen girls, where they say, how come I'm being told that I can't wear this short skirt? Shouldn't the boys just be taught not to look? And, this resonates with girls because they just don't empathize with young boys. They don't understand that, first of all, boys are taught not to do this. They are policed in their sexuality, probably more so than girls are, I would argue. But of course they don't really think about that. They don't really have that sense of empathy because they're very, very solipsistic, and that's what you see very beautifully illustrated in this movie is female solipsism. If Get Out is an anthem to black narcissism, then K through 12 is an anthem to preteen girl solipsism. So the irony, of course, is that she's dehumanizing all of the outgroups and engaging in all of the same kind of shallow, manipulative bullshit that is being criticized here. So that's kind of the dimension of evil in this film. Parents are absent. There's a mother who's referenced in the very beginning, but you never actually see her. By the time Crybaby wakes up to go get on the bus to go to this school, her mother is already gone.
I wish my mom wasn't passed out right now and could at least drive me to the bus stop.
And the father is actually never mentioned at all. He's just doesn't exist, not in this universe. So, you have a situation where all of these children are in this school. It's not really clear why they're there. They don't really understand, and they don't seem to be learning anything either. And it seems that there's all these rules that are very arbitrary, and they don't like them. And in this way, K through 12 is actually, it's a very good indictment of what education has become. Because I think if you ask, kids in school, what is school like, this film kind of does distill the parts of it that they feel are important to them, and depicting it as this horrific kind of fever dream it is actually it's actually quite powerful. It's actually one thing that I'll say that was actually done very well in this. It's an indictment of how school is and how education has become. So you have all of the authority figures are just big meanie poo-poo heads for no reason. Parents don't exist. The other kids are also meanie poo-poo heads because, they're being brainwashed and they're not questioning the greater narrative. So they're just kind of going along with it. And then the question becomes, well, who are the good people? Well, of course, that would be Crybaby and her immediate friend group, who all have magical superpowers. So essentially, they're like destined to be friends. We never really understand why they have these powers. It's not really explained. The best hint we're given is that early on, Crybaby talks about how she had a dream or a vision from an angel named Lilith. And this character, Lilith, appears 2 times in this in this film. Once kind of about maybe 30 to 40 minutes in, and then once again at the very end.
And live your truth. Do not hold fear in your heart.
Please, we don't want to die here.
You've had many bodies before this, and you'll continue to have more. You're immortal.
But we're exhausted. We don't want to feel this anymore.
We must feel the physical pain of this world. Because the only way that we can truly learn is through experience.
And all of the imagery surrounding Lilith, she comes from like a portal to the outside world. And otherwise, this entire film is taking place at this school. And any scenes that take place outside are in these perfectly trimmed, very, very artificial looking kind of gardens, right? And then with Lilith, she's coming from this outside portal, and when we actually see what's behind that portal, in the music video for Orange Juice, we see, an outside landscape that's actually very natural. And this is what I think Lilith is representing, is she's representing nature itself, and she's representing the divine feminine. That's what Lilith is a stand-in for. She's kind of this guardian angel. And, when asked, why aren't you helping us? Why haven't you intervened? Why can't you save us from this place? Lilith explains to Crybaby that you need to experience the pain of this world in order to understand it. And this, I think, reinforces the very anti-school message in K through 12. The argument is, all you're really going to learn here is your experience of having to deal with these people and be in this social situation and go through all of this. You're not learning through the actual traditional sense of education of like reading books and doing your homework and getting good grades on tests and things like that. No. You're learning through the experience of being here. And that's why that's the entire focus of this film. And I'm not sure if she intended that as an anti-school message, but it really does resonate that way. It really hangs together in that way and makes a lot of sense. So they have these powers inside them that they're learning how to use and to control, and that's kind of the message of the Divine Feminine, is that there's kind of this epistemic privilege that the females have. We don't see the boys ever use this power, right? And then, of course, there's a very strong gendered theme in this. Early on, they have like a transgendered teacher getting fired, and this teacher never shows up again. They're not really developed. They're clearly just there so that Melanie can signal to her audience that she's pro-trans, so that she's woke, right? And I believe that was done as a way to kind of come out ahead of criticisms of this being extremely reinforcing of the bimodal gender spectrum, right? Because at this school you have all of the boys in the boys' outfits, all the girls in the girls' outfits. And you have all of these themes about, boys not treating girls well that kind of come through in very shallow, kind of superficial ways.
Is it possible to get assigned a different role? Maybe one that's not so domestic, like a film director or the president of the United States?
Harlot, perhaps?
President? What a joke. Your kind are too soft and too sensitive to handle a man's job.
Having a larger capacity to feel and express emotion are one of the many qualities that make us superior to your kind.
And then, the whole thing is a power fantasy. It's a power fantasy in the literal sense that they have these superpowers that allow them to just immediately solve all of their problems without any hardship. But then also it's a power fantasy from a moral perspective, because she sets up these straw mans of like a boy saying, oh, well, girls have to have domestic things, girls can't be president, so that, she can then say, well, girls are better than boys because we have emotional intelligence, right? And then she kind of has this smug moment where the girls can go, yeah, sister, right? And, the irony is that it's all just a massive victim complex. Nobody is actually saying that in reality. They're just having this fantasy where somebody says that so that they get to have their comeback.
You're being brainwashed!
Which is, it's very girly. Very, very girly. So you can tell that that's what's in play here. The only actual times that the subject matter of what they're studying is referenced, there's 2 points. There's one point when they're outside, and one of Crybaby's black friends, because all the black girls, none of them are the pretty popular girls. The black girls are all outcasts automatically, but Crybaby is super woke and is friends with all the black girls. It's just another way of kind of signaling. So one of the black girls was talking about how she's writing an ethics paragraph about co-ed education and how boys are the problem.
Finish first draft of ethics essay. A treatise on co-ed education. Boys are the problem.
Wait up. Okay.
And there's just this theme of casual misandry. And generally speaking, it's always depicted as, the boys did something bad and therefore we're entitled to this misandry. And in reality, this bad thing didn't happen. It's just girls who watch this and who find that this resonates with them are looking for an excuse to express kind of this gender bigotry. So the school is, I guess, brainwashing them into being traditional, for no reason. And then the other time that you have an actual subject or an actual content of what they're learning being referenced is in the scene involving the science teacher, where they have the song Teacher's Pet. And it's obviously, they cast a very handsome man to be the teacher because they want to play on that sexual fantasy where, you have the hot teacher and everybody likes them. And we all want to pretend that this is a dynamic that never comes into play, but, it totally does. And this was actually one part of the film where they could have created like a dramatic horror element, right? Because he kind of drugs the girl and makes her shrink, and then he has her pinned down and he's about to dissect her, right? Which is it hangs together very flavorfully. But of course, at the last minute, Crybaby bursts into the room and uses her superpowers to fix everything. So, and that's how you can tell this entire thing. It's not really about creating real drama. The moment it would get to that point where you see actual hardships and actual evil and actual ugliness, Crybaby can just come in and just like save everyone, and then it's just not a problem anymore. So the entire thing has like a larger framing as being like one long school day. And it represents all of K through 12. At the very beginning, they have nap time. They have nap time before they even like learn anything. Each time Melanie changes her hairstyle, it represents a new grade. And the overall structure of the film is as one very, very long school day. So at the very beginning of it, you have your nap time and your kindergarten sort of thing and your show and tell. And then by the end of it, it ends with a prom sort of a sequence, or like a school dance, which it's very common in anything that's related to school or high school in particular. Usually that's the like kind of dramatic ending point of these kinds of films, is to have the prom at the end. And that's kind of the whole structure of the album. One major, very awkward deviation from this is that she has a song called Recess. And Recess should be in the middle of the album, and it should correspond to a scene where they're actually outside at recess. But instead, this is at the very end, and it's a song that they use like during the school's prom dance. And that was one part of it that was just really kind of a major failure. Which is pretty sad. Like overall, she did a pretty good job of kind of correlating a lot of this imagery and a lot of these scenes. So that was just one thing I wanted to know. That's my one kind of technical criticism. Another, it's not really a theme, but just a quick little scene they had near the very beginning was when they're supposed to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, and the black boy refuses. Right, he pulls a Colin Kaepernick, and of course this is meant to signal to the audience that Melanie Martinez is pro Colin Kaepernick. That's basically the message. It signals to all these girls, that's the correct side of the issue emotionally.
You hear that? Liberty and justice for all? That's bullshit.
Grab the boy. Get this one. You lost me. Boy, I didn't do anything. Take him to holding. Put him back. What you get?
Now the thing is I would actually agree with this if it were like just men in general saying, nope, we're gonna take a knee because this country doesn't care about males as a class. The idea that it's like promoted in a racial sense is completely stupid, at least relative to the claims that men can make. Anybody who has seen my videos knows that that's kind of where I stand on it. Most black issues are actually black male issues. But of course, it's depicted as black issues so that black women can pretend that they're oppressed, when in fact their female privilege vastly, vastly outweighs any sort of racial discrimination that they're imagining that they're going through. To round this all out, I want to bring it back to the idea of the goddess movement. Now, this movement was based in neo-paganism, and in paganism, in the most general sense, it has to do with the worship of nature, the idea that by looking at nature we can understand the transcendental. Now, the treatment of theology under the goddess movement essentially is a rejection of the traditional way that theology is treated. As Mary Daly coined herself, she used the term goddessing, right, instead of goddess. And the idea is that goddess should be interpreted as a verb, because verbs are transient, right? They are not something that is fixed and immovable like a noun is. And this sort of decoupling of the idea of divinity from concrete or even abstract concepts, really just stagnant concepts where all of its aspects are sort of pinned down and you can analyze them and talk about them, they're moving away from that in order to have it be something that can't really truly be defined. And this appeals to a lot of people, but particularly to women, because it allows you to essentially justify any action that you do so long as you create some sort of a verbal rationalization for it. And it's essentially an application of magical thinking. And this is why we're seeing it in all of the moral landscape that's depicted in this film, because what Melanie Martinez is doing is she is advancing the goddess movement, and that the use of Lilith as this sort of like mother guardian goddess character is no accident. She's depicting that as the overarching guardian, and that they have these divine powers, and all they have to do is access them, and then of course the moral justification follows, and it follows in a very transient, very fluid sense. And in doing this, you know, because that which is divine, that which is good, and that which is evil are not things that are objectively pinned down, you're never on the hook. You get to do whatever you want, and then you can always find your justification later. And that's really what you see embodied in all of the moral themes of this movie and in the goddess movement as a whole. And I think that that's the real takeaway here, is what this is a modern iteration and continuation of that movement that is directed at and carefully designed to appeal to very young girls. So when it comes to this idea of, you know, can we have kind of this white-pilled solution where the females man up and take on moral responsibility and can be held accountable for their actions and can be trusted with adult rights because they're also able to deal with the consequences of having adult responsibility, this is, I think, the front line of that battlefield. Is, you know, are girls going to continue to kind of really follow this self-indulgent approach to morality that Melanie Martinez has created here? Or are they going to reject it and to say, no, like, we can pin down right and wrong, and we can use our reasoning, and we can be rational beings rather than, you know, fleeting emotional messes that just make up justifications for what we do after the fact. And it's a very big question, obviously, beyond the scope of this video. But I did just want to note that, you know, as like silly and frivolous as this video is going to seem to anybody outside of this circle of 14-year-old girls, it is something that is worth considering in a very serious light. And I think obviously this video is going to stand in an awkward place, because either you're a fan of this video, in which case you're going to kind of despise the way I've sort of dissected it and kind of the things I've taken away from it and the way I've really kind of savaged it here. Or you're somebody who, you know, this is not something that's made for you, so why would you care what someone's thoughts on it are? So I get that it's kind of in a weird spot, but I felt like it was kind of worth exploring, because again, I do think it's very important and something worth thinking about. So if anybody else has, you know, seen this and has any thoughts, you know, no matter which camp you're in, if you think I got something totally wrong or I completely missed something that was totally super important, I'd be very interested in hearing about that. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a nice day, and keep it easy.